Welcome to Learn English with Sarah. Today's story is designed to help you learn English naturally, gently, and powerfully through a meaningful journey. As you listen, let the rhythm, emotion, and message guide you. This is not just a story, but an experience to help your brain relax, absorb, and grow. Thank you for being here and enjoy part one. There was once a young learner named Liam, a person who had tried many times to improve his English, but always felt stuck. Every morning at around 7:00 a.m., when the sun touched the window of his small room, he reminded himself that today he would try again. He had studied vocabulary lists, repeated grammar rules, watched hundreds of videos, and even memorized long explanations that promised fast results. But when he needed to speak, his mind suddenly froze. Words disappeared. His tongue felt heavy. His confidence collapsed. And once again, he blamed himself. He wondered if he simply wasn't smart enough or if English just wasn't for him. But deep down, Liam still had a dream, a quiet dream that he never told anyone. He wanted to speak English confidently, not because he wanted a certificate, but because he wanted to feel free. He wanted to travel to make international friends, to express himself without fear. He imagined himself ordering a cup of coffee in English, sharing his story, laughing with others, understanding jokes, and feeling connected to the world beyond his hometown. It wasn't a big dream for others, but for him, it was everything. For many years, English had felt like a mountain he could not climb. Every time he tried, the mountain grew taller. He remembered long classroom hours filled with rules, red marks, and pressure to be perfect. Every mistake felt like a failure. Every hesitation felt like proof that he would never succeed. And slowly, without noticing, his brain began to treat English as something dangerous, something heavy, something he should fear. One day, while walking home from work around 6:30 p.m., he passed by a bookstore. A small sign on the door said, "Learn English naturally." He stepped inside. The room smelled of old paper and quiet stories. At the back of the shop, an old teacher sat behind a wooden desk reading. She looked up and smiled gently, as if she already knew why he had come. Liam told her everything, his struggles, his fear, his frustration. She listened without interrupting, without judging, and when he finished, she said something that surprised him. "You are not the problem. The way you trained your brain is the problem." She explained that since childhood, he had learned English like a school subject through memorization pressure and fear. His brain was trained to think of English as something he must perform perfectly, not something he should experience, feel, and live. She told him that fluency did not come from perfection, but from identity. From the moment a learner begins to feel that English is not something outside of them but part of who they are. She invited him to sit down and breathe slowly. "Close your eyes," she said softly. "Imagine English not as a test but as a friend. Someone who stays with you, listens to you, grows with you. A friend who never judges you." Liam felt something shift inside him. It was small, almost invisible, but real. She continued telling him about children who grow up in English-speaking countries. They never start with grammar. They start with sound, emotion, daily moments. They listen thousands of times before they speak clearly. Their brains learn through life, not through fear. As she spoke, Liam realized something important. His biggest obstacle was not vocabulary or grammar. His biggest obstacle was the belief that he must be perfect before he speaks. He had trained his brain to fear mistakes, and that fear had locked his fluency inside. The teacher looked at him kindly. "If you want to change the way you speak English," she said, "you must first change the way you think about English." Stop telling yourself that you are learning English. Tell yourself you are becoming an English speaker. Those words settled into his heart like warm light. For the first time, he felt hopeful. He left the bookstore around 7:30 p.m., holding nothing but a quiet determination inside his chest. He walked slowly through the evening air, feeling something new, a sense of possibility. When he reached home, he sat by the window and whispered to himself, "I am becoming an English speaker." The sentence felt strange but also powerful. He said it again and again until the words felt true. And that night, as he closed his eyes, he knew that his journey had finally begun. Liam woke up the next morning feeling different, though he couldn't explain why. At around 6:45 a.m., the sky was still pale and the air felt cool against his skin. Usually he woke up with a sense of heaviness, already worrying about how difficult English would feel that day. But today there was a quiet warmth inside him, like the beginning of a new chapter. He remembered the teacher's gentle voice telling him that English was not a subject, but something he could become. Those words stayed with him like soft footprints guiding him forward. He sat up in bed, stretched his arms slowly, and whispered to himself again, "I am becoming an English speaker." The sentence was simple, yet each time he said it, his chest loosened a little more. For the first time, English didn't feel like a mountain. It felt like a path one he could walk step by step without pressure. Liam decided to begin differently that morning. Instead of opening a textbook like he usually did, he put on a pair of headphones and listened to a short English story. The narrator's voice was gentle, calm, and slow enough for him to follow. At first, he focused too hard trying to catch every word, but then he remembered the teacher's advice. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to absorb. So he closed his eyes, and something beautiful happened. Without the pressure of looking at words or trying to translate, his mind began to visualize the scenes naturally. He saw the characters in the story. He felt their emotions. He heard the rhythm of the language. And for the first time, he understood what meaningful input truly felt like. Around 7:30 a.m., he made himself a cup of warm tea and listened to the story again. This time, it felt easier. Some sentences sounded familiar. Some expressions felt clearer. And he realized that repetition, gentle, relaxed repetition, was the key his brain had been missing for years. Later that day, while walking to work, he practiced something new. Instead of letting his thoughts swirl in his native language, he whispered simple English sentences to himself. The street is quiet. The air feels nice. I am walking to work. These were not complicated sentences, but they were alive. They were real. And as he whispered them softly, he felt his mind unlocking a little more each time. During lunch break, he sat alone in a quiet corner of the cafeteria. He picked up an apple and smiled as he remembered what the teacher had said about the importance of emotion in vocabulary learning. Instead of thinking of the word as a dictionary definition, he closed his eyes and felt the cool smoothness of the apple in his palm. He imagined taking a bite, tasting the sweetness, hearing the crunch. Then he whispered apple, and suddenly the word felt alive in a way it never had before. Later, he practiced with other words: hungry, tired, excited. He tied each word to a memory, a feeling, a moment. And deep inside, he realized something powerful. He was no longer memorizing words. He was living them. At around 5:30 p.m., while waiting for the bus, Liam tried another exercise the teacher had mentioned. He looked around and quietly named objects in English. This is a bench. That is a bus stop. These are people waiting. At first, it felt a little awkward, but as he continued, something shifted. The world around him began to transform. It didn't feel distant anymore. It felt connected to the language he was learning. Suddenly, English was not a faraway skill. It was part of the street, the air, the movement, the color of his surroundings. When he reached home that evening, around 6:20 p.m., he stood in front of his mirror. The reflection staring back at him looked unsure but determined. He breathed deeply, lifted his chin slightly, and said, "I want to speak English fluently." His voice trembled a little, but he continued, "I am improving every day." His expression softened. "I am not afraid of mistakes." Then, with a small but genuine smile, he whispered, "I believe in myself." He kept talking, describing his day in English, simple, raw, and honest. He spoke about waking up early, listening to the story, naming objects, feeling more confident. As he talked, he noticed something surprising. The more he spoke, the more natural it felt. Not perfect, but natural. And that was enough. Before going to bed, Liam listened once more to the story he had heard that morning. This time, he whispered along with some of the sentences, letting the rhythm guide his mouth. It wasn't loud, it wasn't clear, but it was movement. It was life. It was the beginning of fluency. And as he lay down around 10:15 p.m., he closed his eyes and smiled softly to himself. The mountain had not shrunk, but he had grown. The next morning, the world felt brighter to Liam, even though nothing around him had changed. At around 6:30 a.m., he sat on the edge of his bed, listening to the quiet hum of the city waking up outside. He realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't dreading his English practice. Instead, he felt a calm excitement like opening the first page of a new book. He whispered softly, "I am becoming an English speaker," letting the words settle gently inside him. Before breakfast, he put on his headphones again and listened to a short English dialogue. He didn't watch the screen. He didn't read subtitles. He simply closed his eyes and let the sounds melt into his mind. The voices in the dialogue felt clearer than the day before. He noticed pauses, intonations, the warmth in the speaker's tone. It was like hearing English for the first time, not as a challenge, but as a melody. After listening twice, he tried something new. He whispered along with the audio, just barely moving his lips. The whispering felt strange at first, almost like he was afraid of breaking the sound. But slowly, the whisper became a gentle rhythm, a dance between his breath and the phrases flowing into his ears. He no longer felt pressure to be perfect. The teacher's words echoed in his mind. Whispering connects input to output. Whispering teaches your mouth without fear. As he walked to work later that morning, the sun rose higher behind him. He practiced thinking in English again, narrating his steps silently. "I'm walking. The air is cool. The day feels good." These were simple thoughts, yet each one felt like a brick, forming the foundation of a new identity. He was no longer translating. He was beginning to think directly. When he arrived at the office around 8:45 a.m., he sat at his desk and opened his notebook. Instead of writing grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary, he wrote down 5 simple words he wanted to internalize that day: relaxed, focused, choose, improve, and patient. He smiled at the last one. Patience had never been his strength, but now he saw it differently. Patience was not waiting. Patience was growing. During his break, he used each word in a small personal story, just like the teacher had taught him. He closed his eyes and remembered moments from his life that matched the meaning of each word. For relaxed, he remembered sitting by the river last summer. For focused, he remembered preparing for a work project late one night. For choose, he recalled the day he decided to start learning English again. Each memory carried emotion, and as he whispered the sentences, he felt the words anchored deeply inside him. They were no longer vocabulary, they were pieces of his life. At lunchtime, while his coworkers chatted around him, he practiced silent English thought chains. I'm feeling hungry. I didn't eat much for breakfast. Maybe I should buy something warm. Yes, something warm would feel nice. He noticed how the thoughts flowed naturally when he kept them short and honest. There was no pressure to sound perfect. Fluency, he realized, was not elegance. It was clarity. Later that afternoon, he tried another exercise. He stepped into the office restroom, stood in front of the mirror, and looked into his own eyes. It felt a little awkward because he wasn't home, but the small room was quiet enough. He breathed slowly and said, I'm improving. The reflection stared back steady and calm. He continued, I'm learning to trust myself. I'm not afraid to speak anymore. I'm practicing every day. His voice grew steadier. I know I can do this. He felt a soft trembling in his chest, not fear, but pride. By the time the workday ended at around 5:00 p.m., Liam felt lighter than he had in months. On the bus ride home, he listened to the same English story again, the one from the morning. This time, entire phrases sounded familiar like old friends. He even mouthed a few lines along with the narrator, matching the rhythm as best as he could. He realized that repetition was more powerful than he had ever imagined. Every listen was like polishing a stone, slowly revealing its shine. When he arrived home, he made a cup of tea and sat by the window. The sky outside was painted with soft evening colors. He picked up his phone and recorded himself speaking in English for 1 minute. The recording wasn't perfect. His voice shook a little and he paused a few times. But as he listened back, something incredible happened. He heard progress. He heard courage. He heard a version of himself he had never heard before. That night around 10:00 p.m., he lay in bed with a peaceful smile. His dream of fluency no longer felt distant. It no longer felt impossible. It felt real. It felt like a seed growing quietly inside him, slowly, steadily, beautifully. And as he drifted into sleep, he whispered one last gentle promise to himself, I'm becoming an English speaker, one day at a time. The next morning began quietly for Liam. At around 6:15 a.m., the soft light of dawn touched the edges of his curtains, and for a moment he simply lay there listening to the gentle world around him. It had been many years since he'd woken up feeling hopeful about English, but now that hope settled into him like warm sunlight. He took a deep breath, sat up, and whispered his familiar sentence. I am becoming an English speaker. The words no longer felt like motivation, they felt like truth. After brushing his teeth, he went to the living room and played a short English conversation clip. This time he didn't rush. He let the dialogue flow through him. He listened once, then again. And on the third listen, he began whispering along. It wasn't perfect, and he didn't expect it to be. His focus was on movement, on letting his mouth feel the shapes of English, letting the rhythm wash through him, letting the sounds become a part of his identity. Before leaving for work, he stood in front of the mirror. The morning light painted his reflection in soft gold. He rested his hands on the sink, looked into his own eyes, and spoke gently. I trust myself. I can grow. I can learn. The mirror didn't judge. It reflected his determination, his sincerity, his growing fluency. Then he added with a slight smile, "Today I speak without fear." As he walked to work around 7:45 a.m., he continued narrating his thoughts in English just like he had practiced. "The morning is quiet. I feel awake. I feel ready." Each sentence came more easily than the day before. He noticed something unusual, a moment where he didn't need to push English out. It surfaced on its own like a natural reaction. He realized that this was the beginning of thinking in English without effort. At the office, a small challenge surprised him. A coworker showed him an English email and asked, "Can you help me understand this part?" In the past, Liam would have panicked, but today something strange happened. He didn't freeze. The words didn't run away. He took a breath, read the sentence slowly, and explained it in simple English. His voice shook a little, but he spoke. His coworker thanked him with a grateful smile and walked away, unaware that she had just given Liam one of the most important victories of his journey. When he sat back down, he felt his heart beat steady. "I did it," he whispered to himself. "I actually spoke English." The sentence echoed inside him like a quiet celebration. During lunch, he practiced another technique the teacher had taught him, stretching simple sentences. He started with "I am tired," then expanded it. "I am a little tired today because I woke up early." Then more, "I am a little tired today because I woke up early, but I still feel excited to learn English." The sentences grew naturally, and he felt his brain learning to build ideas in English without translating. It felt like building a bridge one plank at a time. Later, at around 3:00 p.m., he found a few minutes alone in the break room. He used that time to practice expressing emotions in English. "I feel grateful today," he whispered. "I feel stronger than before. I feel proud of my small progress." Speaking about his emotions made the language feel deeper, more personal, more real. It was no longer a school subject. It was his voice. After work, the sky was turning orange when he stepped outside. He walked slowly, enjoying the evening breeze. He played a short English podcast through his headphones and practiced shadow speaking, listening to a sentence, pausing, then repeating it with the same tone. At first he stumbled, but he kept going. Little by little, the rhythm settled into him. He started to feel the music of English, the rise and fall of sentences, the softness, the energy. By the time he reached home around 6:40 p.m., he felt the kind of tiredness that comes from meaningful effort, not frustration. He made dinner quietly, naming each action in English. "I'm cutting vegetables. I'm cooking rice. I'm waiting for it to boil." It felt almost like having a gentle conversation with himself, one that slowly rewired his mind. After dinner, he sat by the window with a notebook and wrote a short self-story in English. Just a few sentences about his day. "Today I helped someone with English. I felt nervous, but I still spoke. I am proud of myself. I am improving." Writing it made him realize how far he had already come. When nighttime settled and the world softened into darkness, Liam stood in front of the mirror again. His reflection looked tired but peaceful. He spoke slowly. "Today I used English in real life. I didn't hide. I didn't run. I tried. And that is enough." He let the silence hold him for a moment, then added, "I'm becoming the person I always wanted to be." At around 10:30 p.m., he lay in bed with his hands resting on his chest. He listened once more to the English dialogue from that morning. This time, he didn't whisper. He just listened, letting the language settle gently into his thoughts. And as he closed his eyes, he felt something new, a soft, steady confidence rising inside him, telling him that tomorrow would bring even more growth. The next day began softly with a cool breeze slipping through the small gap in Liam's window. At around 6:20 a.m., he opened his eyes and lay still for a moment, letting the quiet morning sink into him. He felt calm, grounded, and more connected to his English journey than ever before. It amazed him how different his mornings felt now compared to the weeks before. Back then, waking up meant facing another day of frustration. But now, waking up meant possibility. He sat up, ran his fingers through his hair, and whispered the words that had become his morning ritual. I am becoming an English speaker. The sentence felt fuller, now richer, like it carried a weight that pulled him forward rather than pushed him down. He breathed deeply, and with that breath, he started his day. Before breakfast, he played a short English interview clip. Today, he tried something he had not done before, listening with his eyes closed for several minutes without any distraction. He let the voices paint pictures inside his mind. He imagined the speaker's expressions, their gestures, the setting around them. The language entered him not as information, but as experience. And slowly, he realized he was beginning to understand something deeper than words, the emotional rhythm behind the sentences. As he listened a second time, he whispered softly along with a few phrases. He didn't aim for correctness. He aimed for connection. His mouth moved gently, forming sounds that felt more familiar each day. He sensed something shifting inside him, as if English was finally becoming a part of his physical self, not just his thoughts. While walking to work around 7:50 a.m., he continued speaking silently in English, describing the world around him. The sky looks clean today. The street is bright. I hear birds. These small sentences felt like stepping stones. Each thought carried him forward, shaping a new mind inside him. He wasn't forcing himself to think in English anymore. His brain was starting to choose it. At work, a small but meaningful moment happened. A colleague approached him and asked Liam, "Do you know a good English video for beginners?" In the past, even simple conversations about English made him uncomfortable, but this time he smiled and answered calmly, "Yes, I know a few. I can send them to you." His voice was steady. His mind didn't freeze. He didn't translate. He just spoke, and it felt natural. During lunch, he practiced emotional vocabulary again. He chose a new word, grateful, and closed his eyes to feel it. He remembered moments when he felt grateful, the teacher in the bookstore, his small progress, his growing confidence. He let the emotion fill him, and when he whispered the word, he felt it attached to something deep inside him. It was no longer a vocabulary item, it was a part of his story. Later that afternoon, he found himself alone in the meeting room for a few minutes. The quiet space felt perfect for practice, so he stood in front of the whiteboard and looked at his reflection in the glass. He began speaking softly, describing how he felt. I feel proud today. I feel like I'm growing. I feel more confident. He used his hands, his face, his breath. He felt himself becoming expressive, not just accurate. At around 4:45 p.m., he practiced tongue twisters on his walk downstairs. Red lorry, yellow lorry, he whispered with a smile. He stumbled, but each attempt pushed his mouth in new ways. He could feel his muscles learning. He laughed quietly when he messed up, and that laughter felt beautiful, like proof that he was no longer afraid of mistakes. When the workday ended, he decided to take the long way home. He walked slowly through the park, listening to another English story. He shadowed the narrator's words, sentence by sentence, letting the rhythm guide him. The more he practiced, the more he felt his speaking muscles loosen. English started to come out smoother, more connected, more alive. Back home around 6:50 p.m., he cooked dinner and narrated each step in English. I'm slicing carrots. I'm heating the pan. I'm adding salt. The words flowed easily. They no longer felt forced. They felt natural, like a soft current guiding him. After dinner, he recorded himself again, 2 minutes of speaking about his progress. This time, when he listened back, he heard something remarkable. His pauses were shorter, his tone stronger, his thoughts clearer. He smiled, feeling a wave of pride wash over him. Later in the evening, as the clock approached 10:15 p.m., he sat by the window with the lights off. The world outside was quiet. He closed his eyes and let English thoughts drift naturally through his mind. Today was good. I spoke more. I felt confident. I am changing. And with that peaceful thought, he whispered once more, I am becoming an English speaker. He smiled softly, knowing that every word, every whisper, every small effort was shaping a new version of himself, one he had waited years to meet. The following morning arrived quietly, with soft light falling across Liam's room at around 6:10 a.m. He woke with a calm breath, feeling a gentle certainty inside him. Today felt different, not because of any special event, but because he could sense a quiet transformation happening within. It was the kind of change that didn't shout or demand attention. It simply unfolded, steady and sincere, like a sunrise. He sat up slowly, letting the stillness of the room hold him for a moment. Then, with a peaceful smile, he whispered his familiar mantra, I am becoming an English speaker. This time, the words felt complete, as if they had matured together with him. They didn't sound like hope anymore. They sounded like truth. He made his breakfast, carefully narrating each small action in English. I'm cracking an egg. I'm mixing it. I'm cooking it slowly. The sentences flowed gently, almost like background music. English didn't feel foreign. It felt like a natural part of his morning, blending into the sound of boiling water and the soft clinking of dishes. Before work, he practiced a short English dialogue again. This time he closed his eyes, listened deeply, and shadowed the speaker without hesitation. His voice wavered in some parts, but he no longer cared about mistakes. He cared about movement, steady, intentional movement, and that was enough. On his walk to the bus stop around 7:40 a.m., he found himself thinking in English without trying. It's a beautiful morning. I feel ready. I feel calm. These simple thoughts rose naturally, like leaves floating on water. He didn't translate. He didn't search for words. They were simply there, and he realized that this gentle shift in thinking was the true beginning of fluency. At work, something unexpected happened. He received a short message from a foreign client. In the past, reading an English message would have made him anxious, but today he felt curious instead of fearful. He read the words, slowly breathed, and replied in simple English. Not perfect, not advanced, but clear, honest, real. When he clicked send, he felt a warm surge of confidence. He had just spoken English to someone across the world, and he had done it without fear. During his lunch break, he stepped outside to sit on a bench under a tree. The air felt fresh, and the world around him hummed with quiet noise. He practiced describing his emotions again. I feel peaceful today. I feel stronger. I feel connected to English. With each sentence, the language grew more personal, more meaningful. It wasn't something he used to impress others. It was something he used to understand himself. Later that afternoon, he walked into the restroom and stood in front of the mirror. This mirror had become a teacher, a companion in his journey. He looked at his reflection and spoke gently. I'm proud of myself. I'm learning every day. I'm not afraid of mistakes anymore. He used his hands, his expression, his whole body. He felt alive. And in the warmth of that reflection, he saw not just progress, but transformation. When he returned home around 6:30 p.m., he played an English story he had listened to weeks before. Back then, it had felt difficult and fast. But tonight, something magical happened. He understood it naturally, smoothly, almost effortlessly. The sentences he once struggled with now felt clear. His brain recognized patterns, his ears caught rhythm, his heart felt connected. He whispered, I can understand this now, and a quiet joy filled him. He cooked dinner, speaking softly about his day. He recorded himself again a 3-minute reflection in English, and when he listened back, he heard someone new, someone braver, someone more fluid, someone more expressive. That night around 10:20 p.m., he sat by the window as the world outside settled into stillness. The moonlight washed over his desk, and the city noise faded into a distant hum. He closed his eyes and let his thoughts wander gently through English. He didn't try to control them. He let them float freely. And in that peaceful moment, he realized something life-changing. Fluency was never about being perfect. It was never about memorizing endless rules. It was never about speaking without mistakes. Fluency was about freedom, the freedom to express, to feel, to connect, to be understood. It was about giving himself permission to grow slowly, gently, honestly. He whispered softly, I'm becoming the person I dreamed of becoming. And for the first time in his life, he believed those words completely. As he lay down to sleep, he made a quiet promise to himself. He would continue learning, not with pressure, but with patience, not with fear, but with curiosity. He would grow one whisper, one sentence, one day at a time. And with a peaceful breath, he smiled into the darkness and closed his eyes. Thank you for listening to this story on Learn English with Sarah. If this journey touched you, inspired you, or helped you learn, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us which part spoke to you most. Your support helps our stories reach more learners around the world.